1999 G500 Europa, 67,000 miles. We just picked this truck up. It's a prime candidate for restoration. It looks good from far, but far from good. Walk with me now as I show you why. Exterior wise, the truck looks pretty good. This is called Black Opal. It's really a beautiful color. It's not black, it's blue. We talked about this in the past. We got a couple minor dings, dents, rust, corrosion points, things like that. Everything can be fixed. And by and large, the truck is pretty straight. Things we got to watch out for, we've got some bubble spots underneath the trim where it looks like we've got some corrosion going on you got to watch out for. But the key is up on the roof. Let me show you. So if you hop up here, we've got some of this action going on. We've got a little bit of this action. Just means that it's been scraping a few garage doors and no one's noticed and scraped off the paint and got some water in there. It happens. Not a big deal. Again, this is a great truck, great candidate for restoration. That's exactly what we're going to do. Looking under the hood, we've got the M113 5-liter V8. This thing is a workhorse. These things go for at least 250. We've seen some past 300,000 miles. They just don't die. They never stop. They can run off of crap gas all day long and just get you home. So that's what we really love about these motors. This one, it's a little wet. It's leaking some oil. We got to reseal it and make it new again, but not the end of the world. Some things we watch out for on these trucks are the pickup points on the frame, like the shock towers. Obviously, we're missing all the paint. Nothing looks really bad. We've got, a leaking brake fluid line in there, which is, indicating we've got a pretty soft pedal. I noticed that when I was driving it. So we're going to deadline this until we actually get on the rack and blow it apart. But the bones of this truck are really good. I mean, everything works. It drives really good, great power, shifts good. It's missing its protective coating. So that's what we're here to do, and fix it and make it perfect again. You can see on the front also, it has not been in any accidents. However, it does look like maybe it took out a few bicyclists or something. Headlights are a little crusty. We're gonna, obviously that's gonna get upgraded, but truck straight, no accidents. This is a great candidate for restoration. These are aging nicely. This is a great low mileage, 67,000 mile example. Stay with us as we make this really special. Okay, the inside of these early Europa trucks are really rich. This is what really changes these trucks from the MB USA trucks, is we still have the wood on the dash, the leather on the seats. Everything still feels very tactile and rich. That's what we really love about these things. So this is again, 67,000 mile example. The leather is still in decent shape. It's still soft and pliable. It can come back with some conditioning. We are actually going to recover these and put something really special in here. But overall, I mean, the truck is in pretty good shape. We're going to do our dash upgrade, integrate our head unit in there that looks factory, and clean this whole area up as well. But some of the things to look for is make sure the vents aren't broken. Also look up at all your trucks. Look at the headliner, because that'll kind of tell you a pretty good picture of what's been going on. Here we've got a little bit of sagging going on. We're going to pull this headliner out and redo it, and we're going to fix this at the same time. But also look for any kind of staining or discoloration up around these corners. That's a pretty good indicator if you've got any sunroof leaks or something going on. This will tell you pretty fast if we need to address that. Even on a truck that you've had on the road for a while, look out for those leaks, because overall that sunroof seal does leak on us. But anyway, this is a great example. This can get cleaned up. Door panels, everything looks really good. The door bellows on this truck are pretty questionable, and you can see the harness coming through on that one, so that's going to have to get cleaned up. But again, this is a great example. The carpet's in good shape. Man, what a nice one. Let's move to the back seat. One of the biggest complaints you see in the back seat is the door is only open so far. We always do our 90-degree door check, so the door is open all the way. Stuff like this is kind of, we're gonna fix that because, you want it nice and tight. Overall, this truck's really nice and tight on the inside. We're gonna do new door seals on every single build we do. We're gonna black out the headliner. We're gonna do different colored pulls up here as well. Just really sharpen it up and tighten it up quite a bit. But check out the back. That's where the real treat is. This is a rare treat. You almost never see a truck with the jump seats in the back. For those of you who don't know what they are, this was an option offered back in the late 90s, actually all throughout the 90s, to put these seats in the back for your kids to make a true 7-passenger SUV. Really rare. Mercedes stopped selling these years ago, and it's almost impossible to find. So the fact that we actually have a set that's complete that works good, really kind of cool. So we're going to restore these as well. We're going to match the leather of these to the new leather on the front seats and really bring that together. So One of the things you always want to look for whenever you're buying one of these trucks is pull up the back carpet, make sure there's not a lot of rust underneath this. This truck already did that. It's nice and fine, or nice and tight, no rust, so we're good there. But we've got some serious action over here where someone's been Mickey Mousing some stuff, so we'll have to address that and make it look right. Join me now as we take this G500 up in the air to inspect the underside to see what we're looking at before we pull it apart for restoration. Underneath our restoration project truck, 99 G500, 67,000 miles, but it's lived on the East Coast, so it's got some rust and corrosion. It's not really bad, it's more surface rust. Take a look with me as we go around it. Here we've got our control arms and our front axles where we're starting to see a little bit of corrosion on all the pickup points. The frame actually is pretty intact. We've got a little bit of flakiness here going on. It's not real bad. What we're gonna do, we're actually gonna pull the body off of this, pull all the suspension off, and we're gonna sandblast the entire frame to get all the rust and corrosion off. And then we're gonna address any affected areas with new sheet metal, new bracketry and component, because all that stuff is still available through Mercedes. We're gonna ditch the factory shocks, we're gonna ditch the factory springs and put better aftermarket units on there that's gonna make the truck ride and drive a whole lot better. Some of the things we see on these trucks, especially if you're looking at purchasing one to look for this, is things like the transmission cooler lines. This guy here, it's pretty wet and you can visually see it. Again, we see this all the time. It's a replaceable item. They wear out over time, so don't stress out about that. The other thing to look for is engine oil leaks. It's pretty common on these because Mercedes, when they originally put these motors together, they used a lot of liquid sealant on the upper and lower oil pan. It's going to go south. So this is one of those things where when we pull the engine and transmission out of the truck, we're going to put it on an engine stand, we're going to take it apart, resurface and reseal everything, and kind of reset that clock. It's an easy process when everything's out. It really makes a big difference of how these things go down the road. Another real common thing we see on these is the front axle, the swivel balls. I don't know if you can see that. Over here, this is a good example. If you can pick up on this, we've got this exterior goop, which is kind of typical because this is packed full of grease and the scupper seal, you know, it's going to pick up a little bit of grease. But whenever we start to see the green tinge, that's the giveaway that the inner CV boot is torn and we've lost all the grease inside. So whenever we see this, that's the trigger point to say, we need to do a front axle reseal because the boots inside of this thing have given way. So it's a maintenance item. No matter if you have an early truck or a later truck, the same concept applies. It's the same style axle. They just need to be addressed. So on this, all the ball joints, all the tie rod ends are dry. The drag links are pretty shot. So we're going to replace all that and make it new and fresh again. Moving along, the transmission itself is pretty dry. I'm really happy to see that the umbilical or the adapter plug on this is dry. It's not leaking fluid. It's not uncommon for the O-rings to go south on these and we leak transmission fluid onto the ground. And then the wiring harness acts as a wick to pull the fluid up to the TCU. It's just a nightmare. So we always catch that. Whenever we see one of these trucks in for maintenance and repair, we always replace it as a precaution just because we don't want to have to deal with it after the fact. It's cheap, it's easy, and it's just not worth the hassle to leave it be. So, one thing I noticed when we're driving this truck, we've got a pretty gnarly exhaust leak. And this is where you really need to pay attention wherever you take your truck for service. If you've got an exhaust issue, make sure that they're able and equipped to do it correctly. This is an example of kind of a pretty poor repair. It looks like someone put on some universal hangers and some universal joints and stuff just isn't even made it up correctly. I hate it when I see this because it really means that we've just got to pull all this off and start over. The catalytic converters are probably still usable, but realistically, we're going to put a set of new cats on this and we're going to dial this in and make it really beautiful. We're going to run a set of stainless steel headers. We're going to do both sides. We're going to do a set of high flow cats with a set of high flow stainless steel mufflers and outlets. There's no reason to let this slide. So if you've got a truck with some exhaust work that looks kind of shoddy like this, the reason is Mercedes actually made all the exhausts on these truck out of stainless steel, which means the only way you can work on these is by TIG welding. It's a tungsten inert gas. Try to MIG weld something like this, it ends up pretty sloppy and it just doesn't work right. So they're very particular on this. There's only one way to really do it. Moving on back, we've got the transfer case area. Now the transfer case is divorced from the transmission, and it doesn't look all that bad, but we do have some seepage coming down here. Now, this is one of those things where we actually pull the transfer case out and we take it apart on a bench and we reseal everything, both the liquid gasket and in and output shaft seals. These are really robust units. Believe it or not, it's the same transfer case they used all the way to 2018. So there's a lot of life in these and they can really take a beating. So we're gonna freshen that up and make it really nice. Along with that, we always look really hard at all the pickup points for the suspension while we're moving back in this area. We look at all the joints for the drive shafts and make sure they're up to speed. We're going to have the drive shafts rebuilt, obviously, on this one. But overall, it looks a lot worse than it really is. Even though we've got some rust and corrosion, this is really just the remains of the paint coming off. But structurally, the frame and chassis of this truck is really sound. I don't see us really having to replace much of any sheet metal as much as just get all the corrosion off, assess it, and start over. Let's flip this around. So moving around to the back of the truck, this is where things get kind of interesting, and it gives you a pretty good view of the exhaust. You see the pipework goes up and over. We've got a center resonator, and just the joints on this thing are pretty toasty. You see we've got, a lot of crust. There's no getting this apart. It's a serious, sawzall action to get that thing out of there. It's pretty rough. So we're gonna just scrap the entire exhaust system right now. We're gonna make that call, and we're gonna make something beautiful happen here. But again, the control arms, they don't really have any paint on them, but again, they're not rusted through, they're not broken, they're not missing any material. It's just kind of that external patina. It's not always a bad thing. It's not the end of the world. It's fixable, so don't stress out about that. The big thing we look for, though, is the suspension pickup points. We've got the shock mounts here, which they're a little crusty. We may put some new shock mounts on there as we're getting up there. Same on this side, just to really make sure that we have a solid foundation to put some real quality suspension on this truck. The bones are good, everything looks great. We are gonna rebuild this thing. So if you're looking at one of these trucks and you start seeing stuff like this, it happens, it's not the end of the world. This is actually a pretty good truck structurally and is caught early enough. It looks like it's maybe sat outside for, probably the last couple of years of its life. It hasn't really been run through anything. That's why it hasn't gone real far. We're gonna fix that and make it a piece of art. Stay with us as we go down this journey.